Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron Feidt.
I'm super excited today because this is the time. This is one of my favorite times of year. We're heading into the end of the year. People
Yep.
are already like starting to think of 2026,
hmm
and next year. And what I love about that is it brings about that feel of restarting and getting going.
Right.
And as a reminder to everybody, you don't have to wait,
No.
until the first of the year to do this. So anytime you're listening to this, like anytime you have that feel, we're about to give some real good content
hmm
in the next coming weeks that are related to this, this thought of getting ready for the new year, but at the same
Right.
time, getting ready for today, getting ready for
Yeah.
tomorrow, getting ready to
hmm
to move your life, get your life in motion. I'm excited about this.
Yeah. And we have regular listeners to this podcast, and thank you for that. Some that as soon as it comes out, they're listening to it, give us feedback, and we love hearing that. It. I really don't think there's any way if you truly listen to our podcast every week and then you do the action exercises that only take a few minutes, a little bit of effort, that you're not going to see improvement in many areas of your life. It's just not possible, right?
Yeah.
And so with the series, we're going to be touching on some topics that, of course, we talked about before. I mean, we're almost into the 500th episode, so of course there's some repeat, but we try to bring it across in a different way. We try to bring it across where maybe it's a clearer way of thinking. And what we did 3 years ago in a podcast, the essence is the same, but how we bring it across, and maybe there's a tip in there that you haven't heard before. And certainly because this is one take, we just talk, it's
Yeah.
going to be different in itself.
And
So one of the things early on that I learned that really helped me tremendously was when you hear something you've heard before, don't automatically say, which most of us all do, oh, I've heard this before. Even if you say it in your head, because what that does is it shuts down your ability to really pick up any nuances, anything new. What you want to say is, all right, what can I learn from this? Right? This is in front of me, so there must be a lesson that I must learn from this. And that's the attitude you want to take. So that way your mind is open to new ideas.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, as we do this, because we're going to be spending a couple weeks here, going over topics that are really going to, get you moving. And one of the things, like you said, we talk about a lot of this stuff, but what we're doing specifically here is we're going almost like in a very specific order over the next few
Right.
weeks of things that we're
hmm
going to talk about. So
Right.
if you've been listening for a while, this is meant to motivate you and get you ready for the next thing. If
Right.
you're new, subscribe, get ready, because the next weeks in the sequence are going to be important. This is like your own little workshop for
Yeah.
free that
Yeah.
you can listen to. This is
Yep.
great. So, let's get started with our Refocus to Rise series. And today we're talking about the most important thing that, I know people hear this and they go, oh, I know.
Yep.
Uh, we're going to talk about mindset
Yep. Yep.
because
For sure.
this is where it all starts. And we're going to talk about some things we haven't talked about
hmm
before. But we all know that before we can really do anything, we have to refocus and we have to know
Right.
what thoughts, what habits, what beliefs
hmm
we're carrying with us into our new start.
Yep. Yep. And so we have to clear the clutter is really what it's talking about.
Mhm.
Um, and what that is your negative thoughts, your negative experiences, your
Yeah.
emotions that you have tied into failures. And we've all heard that you need to fail, you need to make mistakes to grow. And we all know that at one level, but until we really embrace failure, and we embrace failure of not that we like it, but we know that this means that I'm going to grow. But it only means if you're going to grow is if you learn from the lesson. The problem with what some people have is they have a lesson done on them in life. Something bad happens, and then they repeat that over and over again, and then they're like, you know what? I'm just a loser. I'm just this. I'm just that, and they label themselves, and then they're in this cycle of bad things that happen to them. Right? Only you can pull yourself out of that cycle. And that's where this mindset will happen and help with.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because at this point, like if you fail and you think you think you're a quote unquote failure,
Right.
you've missed a lot of episodes of the podcast. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
really, failure's part of it. You're gonna fail,
Yep.
and clearing out the negative, but also building the skills to get your mindset, in a more positive place is what we're doing today. So let's rock into it with our
Yeah.
first step.
Yeah. So the first step is the the setback audit. Okay. And so what you're doing is you're taking an inventory of all your setbacks and disappointments through the year. Now, what we want to do is not to make a list to make you depressed, but really take your top three. What are the three things that you're disappointed in, didn't happen, you failed. I mean, it could be any of that, that it didn't happen. So you didn't really fail, you just failed to achieve. There's a little bit of difference. Or you did something that didn't turn out the way you wanted it to. What are your top three things there? And
Yeah,
this can be a little painful, and it's supposed to be because you need to identify your weak areas in order to grow and get
yeah.
better.
And just touching on that, I want to make sure people really write it down on paper. This is like an important part of this, but write it on paper. Those things that you were disappointed with, and then next to each one, right? I want you to write that this happened and I learned, and then
Right.
fill in the blank with what you learned, right? I mean, if you didn't hit, your fitness goal for the year, or if you didn't hit, maybe you set a goal to wake up earlier every morning and you didn't, then you're gonna write this happened. And what I learned is blank. Maybe you learned you
Yep.
need to stop using your phone for an alarm clock.
Right.
Maybe you learned you need to go to bed earlier, but
Yep.
put down a lesson that you learned.
And that step two is vital because you cannot move to step three unless you do step two fully. So
Yeah.
the top three you have to do, just like you said, what I learned, and take some time if you need to. So this doesn't have to happen all in one day. It can take a couple days. I don't think it should take more than a week for sure. And if you didn't learn anything, you need to figure out what that lesson is
Yeah.
because the third part of this step is then you're going to take that piece of paper and you're going to shred it, or if you have a fireplace, you're going to burn it. You're going to do something symbolically to say, "Hey, listen, I am done with this. These three things that I failed at, I already learned from them. So I don't
Yeah.
need to talk about them anymore. I don't need to think about them anymore. I don't need to feel bad about them anymore because I already learned from it and I moved on and I'm a stronger person from it." Now, that might sound corny that you do, but I guarantee it's good.
100%. Get rid of that paper, get rid of that thought that you failed at something, that you were disappointed. Because the goal with this is really to move yourself from that state of disappointment when we're thinking about it to that state of empowerment where we know what we
Right.
learned and we can start to make plans to move forward. So that's
Yep.
step one, your setback audit. Getting into step two,
Yeah.
reframing our I can't statements,
Yeah.
right? And this is something that it's amazing. Even the most positive people I know will at times say, "Oh, I can't do that." And yes, there are things you can't do, right?
Yeah.
Because this is always the argument. Well, you can't fly, you can't. And
Yeah.
I tell people, like, if that's your limit, then that's great,
Yeah.
but really where most people use this, it's in the things that are holding them back. So
Right.
listen, you know, the first part of this is really listening for those self-limiting statements that you make over the
Hmm.
next 24 hours, right?
Yep.
Maybe the next 48 hours, maybe the week, whatever you want to do,
Hmm.
whatever time frame you need based on how much you use it. Some
Yep.
people might say this once a week, some people might say it seven
Right.
times a
Yeah.
day. But really listen for those self-limiting statements.
And then once you do, you want to immediately reframe the statement to more positive. All right. And just like when we're setting goals, I would like to lose weight isn't a great statement. I will lose 10 pounds in the next 3 months or the next 2 months. I am, so that reframing it to what you've already done or it just setting it in the positive makes a huge difference. And the language, even though it's semantics, makes a difference.
Yeah.
If I say, Mark, I got a big problem, all of a sudden your guard is up and you're like, uh-oh, what's the problem? versus if I say, hey, Mark, we have a challenge we need to overcome. Same thing,
Yep.
same issue, but because I framed it as a challenge, because a problem is a problem, but a challenge is something you overcome.
Yeah.
And so it's reframing that. And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and one thing that I love to do with this, and I mean, I've talked to a lot of people about this, but it's reframing that I can't to, my favorite empowering question is how could I,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And the reason I really like that is because, like if your goal was to run more,
Hmm.
right? And then you just say, you know what, I can't run.
Right.
Okay. You might change that to, well, how could I run? Like,
Right.
like what could I do to make this happen? And what's going to happen in that, this is really important. I don't think people notice this, but what's going to happen is you're either going to figure out why you haven't been running and try to find your subconscious is going to work on
Hmm.
how can I make it happen, or you might find out that that thing's not for you. But
Yeah.
then you're going to go back to, well, why did I want to do this in the first place?
Right.
And how else could I achieve that thing?
Hmm.
Right. So
Right.
maybe you wanted to, start jogging to lose weight,
Hmm.
and maybe you have knee problems. Maybe there's a lot of things that
Sure.
go right. But then you're going to say, well, how else could I get in shape
Right.
without that? And
Yeah.
I think just reframing that thought process,
Hmm.
is a big step for people.
It is. Yep. Yep. So that's step two. So step three, and this is very interesting. I like this whole concept and idea. And if you know anything about dominoes, not playing the game dominoes, but what I used to do is set the dominoes up and let them fall. We all know that metaphor. Um, so establishing the single domino, right? Setting yourself up for success, whether you want to do it in December and get a head start, like we suggest, or you do it in January like everybody else, and that's fine too, as long as you're doing it. Okay. So this is the third step. And so the first part of this is you want to avoid multiple solutions because what happens is, yeah, oh, I do this and I do this and I do this, and then there's all these things that you need to do, and you end up doing none of them, right? So if there's five or six things that you could be doing, it's like, oh, what do I do? I'm not sure, and you get confused. And I think we've all been there. Instead, what's the one thing I can do right now that's going to make the biggest impact? Right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about
It,
with domino.
it's so funny because you're right. I think when people take on that, any goal, right? And I mean, we always use fitness because it's the easy one to
Yeah.
to kind of understand, but I mean, when people take on a big fitness goal, it's, well, I need to eat less. I need to, literally the plan becomes, I need to eat basically nothing. I need to
Yep.
work out until I can't move. I
Yep.
need, and there's all these rules and steps when in reality, like the first thing we usually tell people is just start drinking water every day,
Yeah.
you know, start eating a little bit more protein. Like there's one thing, and they go, well, that's not going to do much. And I don't know if anyone's ever tried drinking a glass of water every morning, every day, but it
Yeah.
it helps if you're not somebody who
Yep.
does that.
Yep.
So, I think what this step really does is it helps you focus and hone in on one thing that you can do for about 30 days
Hmm.
to feel like you have a win under your belt.
Yeah. And just expand on that a little bit. It also creates momentum.
Yeah.
So something small, like I'm going to add this, and what's going to happen is you're going to start feeling better. Let's say we're talking about exercise or weight or anything like that. You're starting feeling better. So now you're going to add things to it naturally because you want that feeling more. So the water turns into, well, I'm going to get up 15 minutes earlier and I'm going to walk. I'm going to walk for 15 minutes. So you drink water, you walk. Now, oh, that makes me feel better. I'm going to walk for 30 minutes and I'm going to get up 30 minutes earlier. And then it's just goals have buddies, and also the momentum they create just turns into more.
So, and that's the trick, because I mean, you start drinking more water. You wake up earlier because you have to pee,
There you go.
and then you go for a walk, and then the walk turns into a run because you have to get home to pee again. So it all, you see how it works. Like this is
Yeah,
this is the
there you
momentum we're going for.
go.
But this is a great tip because just instead of making this huge plan, which it's important to have a plan that motivates you, but
Yeah.
sometimes that one domino. when you're struggling, pushing that over and building that momentum will get you in the right direction. So,
Yeah, there's certain types of people that have to write everything down and plan everything, and it's certainly I plan a lot, but you don't want to plan. You don't want to have planning where you're so much that you're not taking action,
yeah,
and you're writing it all down. It has to be perfect. I used to be a lot like that, and I learned that I just need to, even if it's not 100%, I just need to start it. And that's the big thing in business, marketing especially. Nobody really knows how to market. You just have a bunch of these ideas that you try because this marketing idea is going to work this time, but it won't work next time, or it works
yeah,
in this market, but not that market. So it really is a trial and error, A/B testing, and your goals don't have to be quite like that. My point with your goals and starting something like this is just start it.
yeah.
Just be simple. Like you said, start with drinking water, start walking every day for 15 minutes, and then from there, the compound effect, as Darren Hardy talks about in a great book,
Mhm.
by the way, is going to go into effect.
I remember one of the things that, because I was the same way, like I remember I'd be really uncomfortable and then I'd make a big plan and then I'd
Yep.
close the book on the plan because I felt
Yep.
better. And then I wouldn't,
Hmm.
so really I think one of those things that you learn along the way, I mean, I learned from Tony Robbins, but I don't know where it came from originally, but it was that you never leave, the sight of setting a goal and making a plan without taking, at least one action.
Yep.
And I think that's such a simple and such an easy tip. Like at least start that one domino before you
Yep.
even step away from it because it's going
Yep.
to create that momentum. So,
That was a game changer, I have to say,
yeah,
from him. I
yeah,
remember going through his goal setting seminars. Remember doing that?
yeah,
Sit down and it's a full hour or 90 minutes or something, and all you're doing is listening. This was when I did it when it was on cassette tape. That's how old I am. And I remember not even CDs, which CDs are old. It was cassette tape, and I remember having a pause, even though there was built-in pauses in that program.
uh-huh.
There was sometimes that I had to pause it longer to finish writing, and it was great though. But getting back to that. I love the fact that you take some little small action now, because when you set a goal, you're excited and you're motivated, and you write it down. That's great, and then I'll do it tomorrow morning. What happens tomorrow morning? You get up late, something happened, you didn't sleep right, well, and then you never start the goal, and then the next day happens, the next day, and then you look back a week, and you're like, I never did that.
Yeah.
That happens a lot, I'm sure, with
You
people.
fall asleep with that big plan on your
And then
table,
nothing
and then it
happens.
just,
Yep.
yep. And then 6 months later, you open that book again and make another plan to start over. So, Um, but anyway, so let's review. So clear the
Okay.
clutter. This is all about
Yep.
refocusing your fire, getting your mindset
Hmm.
right, for that reset. So number one is the
Yep.
setback audit, right? So writing down, that list of your personal, professional setbacks on a piece of paper. Next to that,
Yep.
writing this happened and what you learned, and then destroying that piece of paper,
Yes.
crumple
Hmm.
it, rip it up. Uh, I'd say
Put it
burn
on
it, but
fire
yeah, if you put it on fire, make sure you
safely.
have a fire extinguisher. Yeah, it's a safety
Yep.
tip. Make sure you have a fire extinguisher nearby and you're supervised by an adult. Um, all of those things. So that's step one.
Yep. All right. Step two is reframing your I can't statements. Okay. So we're talking about your limiting self statements, your belief, the things that are going on in your head. Make sure that you're reframing those, and you're reframing the words to make them in a positive. If you're writing goals, you're doing that as well. You're writing your goals in the affirmative like they already happened, because your subconscious does not know the difference. So you want to put those statements in your head properly.
Absolutely. And then the last one, establish that single domino theory. So that single domino, that thing that you're going to focus on, avoid 100 actions. Just pick that one thing, like a glass of water when you first wake up, whatever that one thing is that's going to create your momentum that you can do successfully for 30 days and, get that domino going. So again, this is part one, of our series that we've got going here, our Refocus to Rise. So make sure I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next ones in the coming weeks. And we will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/achieveresultsnow. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.